The Eminence in Shadow. It has all the hallmarks of a standard isekai, but with its own unique twist that keep me coming back for more, and here's why. Also, don't forget there's a subscribe button below, and it is free to use if you enjoy. Thank you very much. This anime is about a boy who was isekai'd but actually had carried over his goals from his previous life that he didn't quite get to make happen thanks to a little thing called being human. A matter of fact, his dream since he was a kid was to be a superhero and ringleader of a crime-fighting organization that did all of its work from the shadows and did not need personal recognition for it. He even practiced martial arts and trained and even managed to save a girl from abduction in his previous life in a kind of badass and gruesome way. But this would be before he met his demise at the hand of, you guessed it, a truck. Can't keep getting away with this. But thankfully, he was given another Mashoko Tensei kind of shot when he was reincarnated as a baby into a fantasy world. This world was on the cusp of the Industrial Revolution, as well as having magic. Quite the duo. But particularly thanks to the magic part, his long-awaited dreams had higher hopes than ever. But, just like the martial arts knowledge that he carried over, so did some of his problems, such as having a normal family life, and normal person goals that tend to interfere with his personal ones. Also, the fact that he's a baby. He might have retained his memory, but he lacks object permanence. Truly unsettling. So this would create the basis of the story, similar to that of a Batman balancing two lives and styles, one during the day and one during the night, or in the shadows, if you will. Pun intended. But the best part about this was that he purposely made the choice of being an unexceptional, sometimes bad, but mediocre at best when it comes to quote-unquote his normal life. In other words, he's a background character on purpose. And he even says as much. Which, to be fair, that's a pretty reasonable thing. I gotta give it to him. Pretty smart. If you want to do cool shit in the background without people noticing, you can't do cool shit out in the open. You can't be intriguing. So this young man would go out at night slaying bandits and taking their money that they probably stole from somebody else. And even enjoyed it very much. Perhaps a little too much. Put it this way, he's definitely not the noble Little Red Riding Hood you would expect. In this time, he would learn more and more magic, find cursed blobs that would turn into hotties of different varieties for some reason, and these hotties would join him on his fictional and completely made-up quest to defeat the cult of Diablos. A story he definitely derived from his previous life, most of you would know as the Illuminati. But soon after he began attending the Magical Academy, as kids do, not only would he find that he is a protagonist and a background character, but apparently he's a story writer on top of that, because guess what happened? You know the whole ruse I mentioned a second ago about the cult of Diablos? Well, this was somehow real the entire time. He managed to uncover a dark secret of the world completely on accident because of a made-up story. And hey, I guess their little group has a goal now. And he's beginning to realize that all these fake missions he sent these women out on were actually real and they weren't just entertaining him. And more importantly, that these women, they themselves, were actually the results of experiments the organization was carrying out. So on one hand, this wasn't supposed to happen, but on the other, it's fate and now they have a goal and purpose. But amazingly enough, this doesn't change his daily life much at all. At least it should, but he is determined to be a background character through and through. The one that he always knew he could be. But unfortunately for him, sometimes these worlds collide no matter what he does. How did Shido even find out that the cult was real? Although he fought these members already, I don't even think himself was completely convinced that they were real. But this is an interesting story in itself. It actually started with his two school friends making a bet with him that resulted in him having to ask out one of the most popular girls in the school, Princess Alexia. Now, of course, he's a background character, so he broke out all the stops possible to get the hardest rejection he possibly could. He even mastered the art of the stutter. Just for this. Dedication, damn it. Sadly for him, his plans fell through when she said yes to him, however, putting him on the school's most wanted hit list, which obviously isn't a good look for a man who wants to be in the background as much as possible, but it got even worse. You know why? Because Princess Alexia was fucking kidnapped, which in turn caused him to be tortured because, of course, he's suspect number one, and he has a bunch of haters. But remember, he's a background character, and these are background character shenanigans, so he enjoyed it very much. And the whole kidnapping thing basically started out an all-out war in the city. Now, who do you think did the kidnapping? Oh yeah, the cult of Diablos, of course. Okay, now guess who has to intervene? Shido's very own Shadow Garden. Who else? Now I like to call this chain of events perfect absurdity. But what was even more absurd is Shido. He is by far and away one of the most overpowered characters I've ever seen, at least in his own universe relative to everyone else. He one-on-one the kidnapper who also happened to be the instructor who wanted to marry Alexia and ragdolled that man, even after he took the demon steroids. But the thing is, he's overpowered in a way that the story just wants you to know it. It isn't a situation of, oh, I guess he's against the ropes, so we gotta pull out some hidden ability, or he has to learn something on the fly at the last second to overcome the encounter. No, not in any way, shape, or form. Instead, he beat him up with a sword while talking crap to him, then proceeds to drop a literal atomic bomb on him for no other reason than he can. It was totally unnecessary. He definitely could have saved Alexia without nuking this one guy, but that's the kind of person we're dealing with here. Okay, so all this is kind of a synopsis for how the story would tie in between Shidow's normal life and his secret one as Shadow, which oddly enough, doesn't that sound very similar to Shadow? Shadow? Anyways, these ties and events of the two lives would constantly happen to him literally everywhere. And throughout the story, it's almost as if he began to accept it himself, both figuring out a way to further his goals as a background character and from the shadows. But what's even weirder is not only is he a background character himself, and he says he's one and he tries to be one, but he also recognizes the people who matter more in this story, and even puts himself in positions to help them succeed, or more properly could be said as helping the story progress that he is also a part of. Take this scene for example. The academy was taken over by the cult, and it was up to the smart and silly girl to save them with an artifact that could remove the anti-magic barrier placed around the academy. So, to help the matters, first as Shadow, he was sniping the terrorists that were in her way, that she didn't even know about, and then he eventually just shows up as her crush Shadow and basically tells her that all she's doing is wrong, she needs to get this fixed, stop walking so loud, and just be more careful. And even personally helps her while pretending to be also clueless about the situation they're even in. So in a way, he basically becomes the arbiter of how the story unfolds, and what characters decide to do. But in a way, it's almost as if it was meant to happen, which is a bit of a cool paradox. Now hear me out, this also leads me to another point. You know how Shadow's overpowered and can literally nuke people? About that, the fact that he has such a wide and impactful weight on the story in my opinion, this is okay, and it's almost even necessary. Alright, I'm saying it. I'm just gonna say it. For all that this anime doesn't have, it does indeed have one thing. An overpowered character done right. In most cases, the character being overpowered ruins the story because it basically feels like the writer's just, pulling something out of their butt. They're the god of the story, getting them out of sticky situations with some kind of bullshit. And this is regardless of if the stories are still enjoyable overall. And I'm not saying that this makes the stories enjoyable overall. In fact, I'm not saying that at all, but for some of you, I know it annoys you. But what if the character himself is the writer or the god of the story that controls where it goes, even if sometimes unknowingly? That's a big difference and might be one of the key things that makes this story so unique. But that's my opinion. Let me know if you think he's an overpowered character done right down below. Not up for me to decide. I take it back. I'm deciding in this video. Deal with it. But you let me know what you think still down below. And surprisingly, the Eminence and Shadow managed to intertwine these things effectively, not necessarily in a plot twisty kind of way, but in a comedic way that did lend itself to some more serious moments later on. And surprisingly, it progressed in a way that was better than I would have expected. Things are becoming more complex. Instead of just these little cult camps and small groups that were vying for power, we were actually starting to get more into the weeds of how much power the cult is exerting as the story went on, across the whole world. Like how they were actually in control of the church and had been for a long time. We actually began to get a little bit more insight into the Shadow Garden girls' backgrounds, and the things that they specialize in, and the type of personalities. Instead of just, being Shadow's private army with nothing unique about themselves besides their looks. We got more, and I was a little worried that wasn't going to happen for a little while. Like Gamma, who although she is clumsy, is also a business magnate who made multiple profitable businesses for the Shadow Garden's funding and also seems to make deals about acquiring land. And hell, there's even things that were brought up at the beginning of the story that were still unexplored, like Princess Alexia and her family apparently having some demon blood in them or something like that, which I really am not sure how that wasn't brought up again. But whatever, I guess. And more questions would be presented throughout this story that made me wonder where things are really going and what big pictures are we missing. Big pictures that even Shadow's head ass isn't aware of. In a very serious and revealing part of the story, when the church was found to be behind some of the pretty troubling things regarding Diablos' arm, we actually got left with something even more concerning. The witch that Shadow fought against and also ended up helping escape from some type of memory entrapment also had another name, one by the name of Diablos. Does this mean perhaps that he just helped the Diablos escape, and things are about to get even worse from here? And in turn, the cult of Diablos could be stronger? But hold on, wait. She was really nice, so this could mean that Diablos is nice, but the cult of Diablos was taking advantage of her, or possibly that she just maybe lost her memory and doesn't even know that she was an evil person. Questions. But she did also add that the Shadow Garden should find her one day, and I have not a damn clue what to make of that personally, but I guess we'll have to see. On top of this, more and more groups are beginning to vie for power as the story gets deeper. The cult of Diablos, the church, who is also ran by the cult, or at least was, until they got, fucked up, the Shadow Garden, the princess, the kingdoms, as well as individuals that are making their own small factions, forming groups looking out for their own interest. It's really just getting more and more interesting, and I love it. But if there was one thing that I like about this show, and just one reason I would give you to watch it, it would be because of the absolute comedy I experienced watching it. Fake boobs being cut off, Shido's friends being an idiot, Gamma falling down the staircase, women falling in love with someone thinking they're giving him a chance while he's not even studying it, fake ass whoopings, and most importantly, Mundane Man. Mundane Man, Shido's second alias, is what I live for. He literally won a fight by sneezing and popping his neck. Who writes this? One might say the mangaka, but in the story, apparently it's Shido. So regardless of all these things I liked or didn't like about the show, the comedy was more than worth it alone, and thankfully was the main thing that made all this random isekai stuff even work how it does. Talk about a fix-all glue, comedy, right? I think we can all agree with that. I think we can. But you know what would be even funnier? If you guys stuck around for some more videos in the future. That was pretty good, right? Anyways, that was my review of the Eminence and Shadow. Hope you guys enjoyed, and I'm looking forward to seeing you in another video.